Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a new episode of Public Access America. My name is Jason because that's what my mom named me. His name is Jeffrey because that's what his father named him. And her name is Karen, and I think that's because that's what their parents decided on. Happy Father's Day, and welcome to another episode. Karen from EarKick, I am so happy and excited to have you here. You started what is about 2 months of amazing shows for us because it just really highlighted mental illness and the importance of it and solutions to that. And it all culminated in like one thought, one idea. And I loved that. And I want to have you back on monthly if we can, or bi-monthly, however we can, to get you on the show, just so that we can emphasize to people the importance of the solutions for their well-being. I'm calling it mental well-being now. I'm not calling it mental health.
Yeah, that's it's actually good to call it mental well-being. Not everyone is comfortable with that, but I think we both mean the same. It needn't be all that negative and burden kind of language.
Right.
It's something we all have, right? And mental well-being is more on a positive side, on what we believe we can
Mm.
be and what we believe we can do with our own hands, right? So
Right.
yeah, I agree. Why not call it mental well-being?
That's the goal. That's where I'm aiming for.
Well, don't we all want everyone to be well?
hmm
You know?
Yeah, I think so. I think the pressures of everything just tell us that we can be well once everything is done. Like it's okay for things to encroach on our well-being because, well, it'll be over soon and then we can get back. And we forget that it scars us and leaves us wounded for the next adventure. But
Yeah.
today I kind of wanted to ask, I'm sorry, Jeffrey. I wanted to ask Karen just some. I was reading her bio on Twitter, and you're originally from Colombia and you ended up in Zurich. And a lot of people I'm noticing are upset with where they are. They don't want to
Mhm.
change their surroundings and they don't feel that they can take a journey like that. And so I'm just kind of curious why why you would make that journey. What led you to new surroundings like that?
Oh well. So I'm half Colombian. So
Okay.
my mother is Colombian, my father is Swiss.
Okay.
So I'm what is called a Colombo Suiza. And
Nice.
I was born in Basel, which is in Switzerland, because of many reasons. I was not able to grow up in Colombia.
Oh, okay.
However, I grew up with like Colombians around me in Switzerland, and I always felt odd because I was the only curly haired, dark kid. And it felt like everyone, it felt like it was not, but in the 70s, everyone was blonde, it seemed, and blue
Hmm.
eyed, and they all had, they were all kind of Swiss and had Swiss ancestors. So I was like the only what we call the black fly in the white milk. And
Ah.
it made me really feel like I don't belong there. So I made my way out of Switzerland by myself at 15. And I thought at that time, very, very naive, I guess, I thought going to America would solve the problem because it's a melting pot. That's
Hmm.
pre-internet. And just sounded so fantastic, all these like people all coming to that country and English being the common language and all these idealistic ideas I had. So I ended up in first in Denver, Colorado, in a black neighborhood, which was really interesting because then I also felt like I was very different. And then
Right.
in New Jersey, in a Jewish neighborhood, I'm partly Jewish, but like it still felt very different. So I realized slowly that it's not about looks or religion or anything. It's a global topic to find where you belong. It's not given, right? Nobody's going to
Right.
make it for you. It's part of identity forming, but also part of life to make some compromises and to find inner peace with who you are and what you look and the cards you were dealt. I've all my life I've been a heavy asthmatic. I didn't ask for that, right?
Mm,
I didn't ask for asthma. But at some point you realize, yeah, it's part of who I am. And it may be
right.
part of a good part of me. So in the US, then I had to go back to Europe to after high school to finish my basically European high school. And then I went back to the United States, this time to LA to study music. I'm
Wow.
a professional musician in my first life. And there I had my first child very, very early. I was a very young mom. And I had to go back because it was the time of the riots in LA and the big earthquake. So
Mm.
I was like, maybe not have the baby grow up there.
But
So
but
I
but
ended up,
in LA that you found the melting pot you were looking for, right?
yeah, they all spoke Spanish, if you mean that. Yes, but
Well,
you know,
it's a group of there's little communities of people, but they all intergate, they all interact, they all
yes,
have lives separate from their identities.
yes,
Yeah.
that is true. But you know that the problem that I was trying to solve is I thought at that time that it's all about understanding each other's language or all about, you know, common ideas. And that's just part of the story. The challenge is that people, we're not so good at always being at peace with each
Mm.
other and with ourselves. And that's a challenge that's not purely solved by moving to another country. However, moving to another country, I moved then to Germany, and from Germany, I moved to Singapore. You know, so I've
Wow.
had my share, 30 years abroad. And in every place I landed, I was always very happy for the new adventures. And
Mm.
for like, it feels like having a second, third, fourth chance at life. And that's
Right.
wonderful. The downside a bit is that you really have to compromise. I picked up 8 languages on my way, and you have to like, you're not never going to be home. You're gonna be a bit different, you know. And
Right.
what you learn is a rich set of skills and on how not to lose yourself completely, because you have a core identity, but also not to be stubborn and like reject other people. And that has made my life really rich. Now, to your question, why did I come back? Singapore was my last basically station, and I thought, okay, I need to go back to Switzerland and make peace with the factors and the things that made me go away. And that I was going to give it a shot. I was in Impact Hub Zurich at that time offered me a position, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna try, right? And my kids are grown up, so I didn't have to like move the whole family
Hmm.
from one side to the other. And now I'm here. I still feel the nomad drive, you know, when the wind changed, and I still feel like, oh, I could go somewhere else. And I live very close, like minutes from the lake. That's why my hair is wet. Zurich Lake. It gives me a sense of like I could go anywhere, anytime. But for now, fingers crossed, I have held out here for a good 3 years, 4 years, I believe. Yeah, and it's good. I would encourage anyone to try. I know I was very lucky to have the opportunity to go other countries, but there is always a way you can make it somewhere else, even if it's just exposing yourself for a while and then coming back.
Yeah.
And it's just good for us, you know, to see that not everything revolves around ourselves and our problems. Not everyone observes you all the time, and you know, it's sometimes good to just be a nobody
Yes.
somewhere.
Some humility,
It's
right?
Yeah, and I know it's great also because you can rewrite your story a little bit. You know, if you feel that people are unfair to you in one place and that they must misjudge you, you can start anew in a new place, and you can rewrite your story, and you can make new friends. And nothing that is uncomfortable over the long haul needs to stay that way. You know, you're in the driver's seat of many things, not everything, but of many things. You know, you
Right.
are in the driver's seat. Yeah.
I love
So
that.
I've got to ask, Jason, did you somehow get a hold of my German thesis from 10 years ago, 12 years ago?
I
When
German.
you
I
that
dox you. I dox you. I've been doxing you for 2 years, buddy. I know everything.
Ja, ja, Karin,
Na,
Karin, kann ich nur ein bisschen Deutsch sprechen? Ist sehr akademisch, ja, aber
das
es
ist
ist
sehr
okay.
gut. Aber hallo.
We have a big listenership in Germany, so
You
Dankeschön.
do? Ja, oh, dann möchte ich aber von euch hören. That's great. I didn't know that. So what was your thesis about in German?
So my German thesis was actually on Turkish and Greek, uh, basically the lack of a home that a lot of the population feels they have post the Gastarbeiterprogramm. And so like, I really dug into what were the similarities between the Turkish and Greek experience and immigration in the United States and what that looked like.
Wow.
And
that's amazing.
So for my research, what I ended up doing was I ended up reading a bunch of different authors that were, German so German and Spanish, German and Japanese, German and Greek, German and Turkish, and compared that to, how, I would say what we would call the DACA kids and, other, people who have immigrated to the United States, mostly focusing on southern border and how, for the Turkish and Greek people, they didn't feel at home in Germany because there's a lot of the German laws that don't apply to them. Like, they're never going to be, quote unquote civilians of the country. Germany is a land for the Germans. That's the way that their constitution is written. But because they grew up in Germany, it was the closest thing to home that they had. And a lot of the times when they would go back home, quote unquote, back home to Greece or to Turkey, they weren't looked at as Turkish or Greek either because they had grown up in Germany. And so, they could be fluent speakers, and they wouldn't necessarily even sound like they have any type of an accent in their home language because, they grew up with Turkish and Greek parents. But because of the fact that they didn't belong to German society and they didn't belong to Turkish or Greek society, they never felt like they were at home anywhere. And so so it's kind of like what I kind of called Heimlosigkeit. And so just, it's a very interesting experience of, it's not homelessness as we would think of in American context, but in a fact that you just don't belong anywhere. And there was an author, I believe, his name was Jose F. Oliver. He was Spanish and German. He was a poet, and he kind of talked about this in one of his poems, where he wasn't necessarily Spanish, but he wasn't necessarily German either. And he kind of coined a new word that didn't really exist in German, but the lovely thing about languages is that you can create language and create meaning behind it. And so he called it Heimatslos. And so, there's that lack of a homeland and that feeling of never really belonging.
It's so related to that Heimatlosigkeit. I used to call myself Heimatlos, even though I have two passports and officially I belong to both countries, Colombia and Switzerland. But it's that feeling, and after giving it many thoughts and living in Germany, I firsthand saw that play out in the Turkish, second generation, basically. Not so much in the Greek, where I stayed in the north for 20 years in Germany. But I felt this Heimatlos. And I decided at some point that I was going to turn this pain or whatever, like that longing into something positive. And the way I told my children, I taught them, it was like, I'm no longer heimatlos. I am a bridge now. Like I'm okay with being between two pillars. I'm okay because I'm good at this bridging, and people love bridges. So I'm gonna stop longing for being like one side or the other. I'm going to focus on being that bridge. And that helped me. It helped me. Nowadays, I call myself a nomad, but it's not comparable to what some Turkish people and Greek people experience in Germany. There's also other citizens that do get a passport, by the way. It's not impossible nowadays to become a German, but it's still just a passport, It's not something that you can, it's not a second layer of skin or something, It's just a passport. And you have to find your inner peace with it. Definitely.
Yeah. The Syrian refugees changed the face of Germany in a very positive way. And so I think Germany's realizing that, a little inclusion here and there is a good thing,
Yeah, it takes me a little longer, but I think at least the younger generation woke up to the fact that it's actually their luck that like there's people coming. It's the same in Switzerland. We had a lot of people from Tamils come over, and it was a huge discussion, and it added to my anger about why we're not so international here back in the 70s, 80s. And now when I came back after so many years to live in Switzerland, these people who were at the total bottom of society, and the Swiss wouldn't even talk to them sometimes because for them they were like under dogs, whatever. And the fun thing is you can't stop them from going to school, from becoming really good, from then becoming directors of banks and executives. And when I came back and saw all the children of the people who had to flee to Switzerland, being in these huge positions, being in the army, leading other people and speaking Swiss, like this funny language, I was like, okay, good. We're getting healthy here.
30% of Zurich is foreign, and I like that. And they have Switzerland has 4 languages. So
4 national languages, yes.
German, French, Italian, and what is that?
Romansh.
Romansh. It's a very old it's a very strange language. I love it. I only understand, but I can't speak. And it's only spoken by the people in the mountains, kind of. And within the official language, there is 6 or more, like we call idioms, differences between them. And it's a cultural treasure. But to be honest, within Switzerland, if we don't speak one of the other languages, which we are actually required to, we just turn to English. So you will hear a lot of English spoken. In the German part, we speak Swiss, which is like
Schweizerdeutsch,
Schweizerdeutsch, exactly. The Germans don't understand it, but we understand it. It's perfect. And then there's French, and then there's Italian, then there's Romansh. And we're required to learn French, but only French. And the French-speaking part is required to learn German. And we mutually hate it, of course, in school. And now the young generation, they all speak English. So you don't even bother to try to do something with your rusty French or rusty German, because everyone is really fluent in English. It's amazing. Yeah. Not sure if that's good or not, but it is what it is.
I think America could take an example from that. Yeah. Zurich is a mini growing melting pot, and it's like its conditions suit that. I mean, how many languages? 9 did you say languages that you speak? 8. I can barely speak 1.
I've got 2 under my belt, and I can understand a handful of others.
I can understand Tagalog a little bit, but I can't speak too much Tagalog.
Not easy. Tagalog has got some Spanish in there. I don't understand it either. Only the Spanish words.
Right.
Oh, Zurich had to become that because it's, we've got Meta here, we've got Apple here, we've got Microsoft here, we've got Google here. A lot of big tech companies have chosen to come to Zurich for a couple of reasons. One being the nearness to very well-educated students. The ETH is one of the best university. is in the world. And then there is the quality of life. And if you want good talent to stay, you got to offer them something. So it's not so much the lake, which is beautiful, but the circumstances, it's very safe, you can leave the doors unlocked and etc. That get people to want to be in Switzerland, and that's an advantage in Zurich right now, because Meta is setting up a lot of
I feel like Karin is trying to recruit me in a way to move to Zurich.
Yeah, you have to make, you have to come over and get going, because I might leave
there you go
in a few years. No, I mean, really, come over. Yeah, really come over. You'll be my guest. I mean, that's my Latino part of me, is like, you all come to my house. There's always some space.
That's how I feel. I love that. But I think it's important. And Jeffrey, you've moved around a lot too. But I think I have too. I just don't feel settled in any one place, And I think that's grown for me to see more of a global community, because I want to feel settled where I am, and I can't do that by saying I'm from Florida. But if I say I'm from Earth, well, yeah, now I feel settled. I'm in a good place, right where I should be,
For me, it's always been like, when I've moved to different places, there are different aspects of the community that I'm around that, you can find home in. Right. So like growing up in Montana, being a Montanan is a strange thing in and of itself, because we always, no joke, wherever we go, we always seem to find each other. It's the weirdest shit ever. It's not a big state. There's only like 1 million people in the entire state. Yeah. Yet somehow we always find each other no matter where we go. I have run into Montanans in Arizona. I've run into Montanans in DC of all places. I've run into Montanans in California. A few weeks ago, I went out to the gun range and I ran into a couple of people who, I ran into a couple of Montanans, one who's, literally, maybe a couple hours from my hometown, and another couple of people who, they're from here, but kids going to school at Montana State. And so, we just have this weird ability to find each other, and I don't know how to explain it other than that. We all just kind of get each other. But in
1 million people say, hey, I got an idea. It's so easy for those 1 million people to hear it. Hey, I'm going to go to Washington State. Suddenly 20,000 Montanans hear that that's the thing to do. And you all go to Washington State, and then you get together and you're like, hey, I think Arizona's nice. And then you all end up down there.
But you know what? I just read something interesting. I didn't finish it, but kind of like the headline was like, the billionaires are moving to Montana and, learning the fish and all that. What's going on there? Do I have to move now?
It's a really great state it's wide open. It's just really.
So the thing about Montana is that, at least I would say up until recently, Montana was always one of those places where people kind of ended up finding their connection to nature and being outside.
Yellowstone's partly there, right?
Partly. But everybody found something different. And, if you grew up there, you kind of understand it. You may not exactly enjoy the politics, but there's just something about the place and the people. The people are friendly, for the most part. And everybody's kind of got a, your business is your own, my business is my own. We kind of just leave each other alone, and we're friendly along the way. One of the funniest things, when I was in college, I took my buddy Travis back to Montana to go hunting on my ranch. And as we're in this 2-lane road, out in the middle of eastern Montana. As we're driving by, some person, passes me, and I wave at them and they wave at me, and we just keep going. And my buddy Travis goes, "Oh, did you know that person?" I went, "Nope." And he was just like taken aback by the fact that I would just wave at a stranger. It's like, it's Montana. Like, we wave at each other because the chances are that you're going to see another car coming down this road anytime in the next hour is probably pretty small. Or like for me growing up in Montana, if somebody was broke down on the side of the road, you stopped and you helped them.
Right.
That's just how you did it. Like and people who weren't from Montana didn't understand that. So like there was one time where, there was an elderly couple that, I was driving back from one of the towns, and I encountered an elderly couple that had broken down on the side of the road. They weren't from Montana. They were from a larger city, and how they were on my stretch of highways, I don't even understand that. But so I pull over to help them out, and they were very suspicious of my help. And as a kid, I didn't necessarily understand that, because this was just what I grew up doing. Somebody
Right.
broke down, you help them. That was just all there was to it. And so we get to talking with them. They're not from here at all. And I said, well, the closest shop is going to be about 10 minutes into town. And it was like 100+ degrees that day. Their car is not running. I'm like, look, I got air conditioning. Why don't you lock your car, get in with me? I will take you into the shop. We'll figure out how to get your car towed in, and at least get you out of the heat, because it's pretty oppressive when it gets up over 100.
Yeah.
So I get him into the shop, and I grabbed Scotty, who was the head mechanic there at the time, and asked him if he had a trailer that we could get their car up on. No, so we go to my shop, because this is literally small town America. So the gas station / mechanic shop in town doesn't have a tow truck, and it doesn't have a trailer that we can put this vehicle up on. So we literally just go to my farm shop, grab my our farm trailer, and we go out there and we grab this vehicle, get it up on the trailer, get it hauled into the shop, drop it off. And the thing is like, most people, like at this point, one of you two is probably trying to figure out, so how much did you get paid for this?
Yeah. What's it gonna cost?
I didn't get paid anything for it, because this is just what you do.
That's just what you do. Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody needed help. You just help them. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
You weren't thinking about, oh, I'm going to get paid by this couple, or, oh, the shop's going to pay me, gas mileage for towing. That's just not how it works. I mean, even when we worked cattle, you couldn't pay people to come help you work cattle. But if you said beer and pizza at the bar, you'd
Heck
have
yeah.
more trucks and trailers show up than you needed.
Because it's better to be a part of a community than isolated and rich,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and so Montana, it's weird. There's the sense of community of, hey, I help you, you help me, we just kind of do whatever. But then you also have this, I do my own thing, you do your own thing. We really don't,
Right.
At least that's the way that it used to be when I was a kid.
Karin mentioned in LA that she was in a Black community, and that felt like weird.
That was in Denver. Yeah.
Oh, in Denver.
Yeah.
I did that myself, because of income. I'm on disability. I can only afford certain housing. And that was how Jeffrey described it. Once people knew that I wasn't there to judge them, and that I would leave them alone if they had a fight, we were friends. And I got too much Costco one day, and I left it on their doorstep, and they came down and they were like, "Why'd you do this?" And I was like, "Because I bought too much. I didn't see the sizes. I don't need 1,000 Nutribars,
Right.
And so they came down and they were like, "Hey, it was 2-for-1 pizzas." So they gave me some pizza, and eventually they didn't hate me. They weren't worried about who I was. They were just happy to know that I was around. And then when something happened, they would come to me and say, "Hey, could you go talk to the landlord for us?" Because they thought I was friends with the only other white guy they knew.
That's the thing is, in any case, where humans need to behave, no matter what color, no matter what background, whatever, it's the behaving part. And you got to earn the trust, because it just seems like if you look like your neighbor or your neighborhood, it's going to be easier. It's a complete illusion. We need to earn our trust. And it's just more obvious when somebody looks different. When I was in Singapore, all Asians, I didn't understand the word of Chinese. And I was like, I feel like from Mars. And everything feels different. But I was like, okay, I'm going to start small. I'm going to try to speak a few words and make a fool of myself. That's human.
Right. But they care that you're trying. They hear that and they're like, "Oh, that's funny, but thank you." Because you're paying
honest,
you're giving a little respect. Right.
Yeah, but they
Once
switch
you
to
start
English
trying,
immediately.
then they try, right?
Yeah. Now it's a good experience. To be honest, I think every young person who can afford or do a year outside of their own country or state, go do a social work, something like that. It's great. It's a bit hard in the beginning, but it's probably the best year you'll have in your life. I sent my daughter when she turned 18. First thing I did, I sent her to Colombia, to Cali, very violent city, to work in a slum for a year. And I told her, you can come back if it's too tough. It was the best year of her life. She didn't earn a dime, but she I mean, she when she tells about it, it's like she was in heaven, in some paradise. It was just because the community there, because poor people, and she was there helping. They just had an amazing community. I said, what do you do? I mean, these guys have no money to go out. And she said, oh, Mom, I mean, we just always played with something. We had so much to talk about. It was I was never lonely, she said. There was not this doom scrolling or sitting in front of a TV all day. It just doesn't happen, for many reasons. And I think every young person should really go. It doesn't have to be working in this slum, but doing something that you might not be able to do later when you have responsibilities and jobs and kids and whatnot. But early on, that's a good one.
I think one of the biggest things for me, like, because I always wanted to be a world traveler, is that growing up very, very poor, it is just not possible. The fact that I only got to go to Japan because I had a buddy who worked for the airlines, and he got steep discounts on tickets. And so I ended up being able to get a business first class round trip ticket to Japan for $115.
There you
Amazing.
go.
So it's like, I couldn't
the opportunities
say no.
you get, right?
I couldn't say no.
But
if you were to tell me that it's like, oh, hey, you need to go see this place, at the time those tickets cost $1,300 round trip, and I could barely afford rent as it was. I really took a hit on that one to go, but it was so worth it.
I agree.
And
I think children nowadays, they forego the challenge for the mediocrity of consistency, and so they live in a sort of boredom because they're never challenged. And then once they are, when they're 40, they're upset about it. But I think like what you did with your daughter is you said, here's going to be a hardship and you're going to overcome it. And the lesson that you're going to learn from being scared and then overcoming something is something you can take in your future when you realize things are different and I'm alone, but that's okay because I've been there before and I survived.
It's not for every child, I'm sure, or a young person, but the ones that are kind of willing to go, we should really make it possible. And the other way to travel is to read. All my childhood, I read a lot. I read myself to Antarctica and back. I read myself to the Kilimanjaro and back. If you can't travel for financial reasons or whatever it is, or maybe you can't let someone, that you're in charge of be alone, at least turn to books, because that's, you can just disappear for hours.
Or podcasts.
Also good. I mean, podcasts didn't exist at that time, but podcast is a good one too.
I love
and
it.
Just listening to the sounds of a different country or the sounds of a different language, that does something to your soul. It does something to your mind, right?
Yeah, I think we want to be self-isolated so that we can feel superior. We were talking about foods, and what I thought of was, what do white supremacists eat? Because the melting pot of America gives us our foods.
They eat crow.
They have to, because there's nothing else American except possum, that I can think of that wasn't an influence from another country. So
I mean, the language we speak isn't even our own. It comes from England.
Exactly.
And the language is a mixture of German and French. So here you go.
And Latin. Yep. Lots of German, French, and Latin, and even German is a mix of German and Latin. And it's for me, like, especially like where I studied German linguistics a lot, and can go back and I can read Old English and Old German, and I can understand where the language started to split and how they became different. Like it's really interesting to see that. But also too, like in my own experience, there are just some things that if you understand community at all, you find experience and relatable experience. So like when I moved to Phoenix, the number of people of color that I was around was more than I'd ever been around in my entire life. I have always said that where I grew up, it was wider than a snowball in a blizzard.
Right.
But when I moved down to Phoenix, now you have a heavy Latino community, a heavy Hispanic community. And it's like, I feel a little out of place in a lot of ways, but I ended up getting invited, to a few different family functions.
Yeah, because they'll feed you.
They'll feed you, and I luckily make friends very easily.
Right.
But having grown up in a large Catholic family, a lot of them are Catholic. And so there was a lot of things that were very familiar to me because they were a large Catholic family, the large gatherings, the food, just the having fun with family. Like I felt more at home with those friends than I did with most of the white people I met when I was living in Phoenix.
You know why?
Because it felt familiar.
Because you earned it. Because it wasn't just people that were supposed to like you. It was people that decided, hey, we want to like this guy. And that feels so good, to go out on your own and not know anybody and then meet somebody and be like, that's my friend. I made that myself. That's not like an extension of somebody I knew, right? That's really neat.
Yeah, the food part is so important. People bond over food, and if it's something that everyone has to do, eat is something that you do every day. And I think a lot of conflicts can be just, resolved over a good potluck.
I love potluck.
Yeah, because it gives you something to talk about. It's all your senses are involved, and there is no right or wrong. It's like, it's interesting. You try this, and oh, that's how you do the chicken, or oh, that's how you do this and this vegetable, and there's a mutual curiosity and wanting to know more. That is the opposite of being judgmental and the opposite of being distrustful or like expecting others to be bad. So food goes a very long way, and it's something that every culture found out, that food kind of appeases people, and we should do more of that. We have a lot. Zurich has a lot of Ukrainian refugees now, thank God. I can't wait for this mix to come out, right? And I can't wait to see their cuisine take a hold here and enrich what we eat here. I can't wait. And all these people that are bringing me new ideas on how to cook food, how to what is tasty to them, what is a dessert, what is a hors d'oeuvre, so cool. And I think it's the common things, the mundane little things that help you overcome certain barriers of identity, of prejudice, whatever it is. Food is a good one. Yeah.
And I think that's been like one of my favorite things about being able to move between large cities is I've gotten to try a lot of different food that I would have never imagined. For me, it was actually finding good Mexican food in Arizona, and then up here, I've gotten to try any number of different fantastic things, like great Indian food. I've gotten to try great Vietnamese food. I've gotten to try
he loves his German food there.
I do love and that's I think that's probably one of the more interesting ones, is because Debbie has this fantastic palate that can taste everything. But the excitement Debbie gets for German food is like unparalleled in a lot of ways.
I love that.
You know, and it's so funny because like a lot of the stuff that it's very close to a lot of the stuff that I grew up eating because my family's very German. So, you know, there were certain things that I just, you know, I was used to eating.
Right.
And
Comfort.
yeah, and or you know, it was very close to those things. So like,
Mhm.
you know, having some of those dishes, I'm like, oh yeah, no, I grew up with, you know, dishes that were very familiar to this.
Mhm.
Or very similar to this. And so for me, it's like, you know, it just kind of felt like another region of home in a lot of ways. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you having German food is just like, oh yeah, no, this totally would seem like something that would have been on my, you know, on my plate somewhere.
I love that. My
Yeah.
So
like my aunt, my grandmothers, they're all from Norway. Hi Norway, by the way. They are the country that is listening to us the second most to the United States. So I love
Norway.
Norway. Norway.
Norway.
I
Oh
love you,
man.
Norway. My
But
great aunt, Signe Godi, and my grandmother, they were from Norway. And my aunt would give my mom these cookies, Fuddyman, every Christmas, but she wouldn't give them to anybody else. And then one day my mom let me have one, and I was like, this is dry. You know, like this is star anise and dough, right? And I was like, this is dry. But then about 20 years later, I asked somebody from Norway, I want Fuddyman. Like I just really, and they gave me the recipe and I made it and it felt like home. And then I gave that to the people that at the party I was with and they all loved it. And they asked me to make that still because now it feels like home to them. And I love
mhm.
that
Yeah.
idea of you bring your food. I brought mashed potatoes to a Filipino potluck, and the best thing was in the morning to see 4 or 5 Filipinos around the table using spices on their mashed potatoes. Like, did you try the garlic? I love it. Did you try the lemon pepper? Yeah. What is this? What is this mashed potato thing? Jason, can you make more?
It's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mashed potatoes, aka Irish guacamole. That's what we
Right.
always called it.
Irish book. Oh, I've never heard that one, but that's a good one.
Yeah.
Oh my
that's
gosh.
that's so funny though. But I mean, realistically, like that's, you know, potatoes are one of those things. Like I think so many different cultures have potato as a part of their
Yeah.
diet,
Yeah.
and it's so funny like to learn, you know, what everybody else does with their potatoes, because it's like here's this food that I've had in so many forms, and I've yet to really have a bad potato experience.
Right.
But I have realized that my potato experience is extremely limited. And now it's like, I just want to try all the different potatoes
Oh
because
man. Yeah.
it just kind of seems like everybody has their own take on the spicing, their own take on the cooking, their
Right.
own take on, and every time you have it, like I've yet to really go, nope. I think the only one that I've ever really had an issue with is potato salad, you know, at
Mm.
least American potato salad, which is like, you know, not really, you know, the potatoes aren't really cooked all that well,
And it's just
and it's
covered in mayonnaise, right?
mostly just mayonnaise and mustard
Mm.
Yeah.
and maybe some like really nasty onion. But when I was in college, one of my German friends was like, "Oh, I'll bring potato salad," and I'm like, "Yeah,
Ooh.
no, I don't like potato salad. It's pretty nasty." And she looks at me and goes, "But you've never had German potato salad, have
That's
you?"
true.
That's something else.
And I went, "Wait, the Germans have their own potato salad? I am intrigued." And it turns out I actually really like German potato salad.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
there's so many varieties of that. You know, the fun thing is that in our team at EarKick, we're 10 nationalities, and I dream of having everyone, because some of them I have never met in person, of like having a retreat where we have a kitchen. It can all be tents or whatever, but good kitchen. And then we're going to do exactly that. There's going to be potatoes one day, and everyone does one kind of potatoes, favorite one. Then there's pasta maybe, and then there's pizza maybe. And it's just going to be all around food and spices and what's the best hack here, and because that plays, it not only is good for you as a team, but it also plays with your creativity, with your imagination. And imagine all these developers and techies and cooking, and then going home very, at least me, very inspired to try out all these things. So I can totally relate to what you said.
Oh yeah, take something that's so familiar to you, aka the potato, but then find out that the way that you have interacted with the potato is now like just one tiny little sliver of how you can interact with potatoes in general.
Yeah. I had the Indian food I had potatoes in the stuffing, chickpea stuffing. I loved it because I love chickpeas. And I didn't know they had potatoes in India. It just fascinated me that it was in there, and it fit perfectly. There was about 40 ingredients, and none of them were unnatural. It was like mint and sage and all these, and cumin, and it was just so good. I loved learning that the potato was there.
And then there's, once you get into talking about food, making food, sharing food, breaking the bread together, there's just very little room for judgment and for pettiness and all these ugly sides that we can have, right? So
I think and I think that's been one of the, like, at least in this house, one of the things that we've always said is you've never met somebody who's angry and eating tacos at the same time.
Right?
Like, there's just something about tacos that, whenever you're interacting with people who are also eating tacos, they tend to be pretty chilled out.
Agreed.
And the glorious thing is that, tacos are another one of those things. You can do so many different things with them. Like, I would have never imagined vegetarian tacos tasting good, but there I was at a street, at a street truck in California having vegetarian tacos, and I was like, oh, these are actually really awesome.
Yeah.
It's and that's the glorious thing is that you can take one simple thing and figure out how to include so many different people. Potatoes are vegetarian, but by adding meat, you've got the meat eater side. By adding, by keeping dairy out, you can keep help the people who can't do dairy. By adding certain spices, for example, turmeric is one of our favorites. Turmeric is great for inflammation. They're just, you can figure out so many different things to do with all these things, and it just kind of shows you, hey, this is one little piece of the puzzle of inclusion.
Right. There's so many foods that do so many different things, and we have so many problems that could just be solved by that. I actually had that all planned for the second hour. Sneak peek, by the way. And I do want to turn because Karin mentioned EarKick, and I just saw a tweet that said there is a lot of advancements at EarKick that we need to talk about. So I'm kind of excited to hear more. I want to say Happy Father's Day to my daddy Kai. And I had Kai download the EarKick app, and so that they could be on the show. She could be on the show, but she has a family dinner, and we're gonna have her on with you next month, and we're gonna discuss how it is, because Kai not only is a member of the LGBT community being ace, but she's also legally blind and amazing and independent and funny as heck. So I wanted her opinion on it. She's also very musical, and I wanted her to find the ambient mixer.
Oh, great. That's cool.
But she has a lot of stresses. She has a lot of young people are looking to identify with certain spectrums, and so when they find one, they're finding where they want to be on it. So nobody is anything, but discovering that little parts of you may be are interesting, and that's what Kai taught me. And she's using the EarKick app now. So
that's amazing.
What is she finding now?
Well, first of all, for the ones that have been using it before, we had a rebrand. So you see that we have a panda now. Yes. And just, why? It's when you're struggling with anxiety, stress, depression, and going through hard times, you need some empathy, and you won't find it all the time. So we came up with Panda. The EarKick is a panda, And it's this furry little ball, and it's the characteristics of a panda that are important because, well, they're not just sweet, they're also, their presence makes you be chilled.
Mm-hmm.
Then sometimes they're clumsy. A lot of people who struggle with mental health or other issues feel like people judge them because they're awkward or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
And here's this animal that's amazingly clumsy, but so sweet, and the whole world loves it, right? So, clumsy is not equal as bad, right? It has attentive ears, it's a very good listener. And, it's internationally loved. The panda as an animal likes to be, it needs a lot of time alone, but it's still a social animal, other than people sometimes think. So it strikes the balance between needing me time and also being a good comrade, right? It is witty, it is more intelligent than most people think, hence the clumsiness has nothing to do with intelligence. And it needs, a lot of time to digest food, to digest things, right? And that's why it sleeps a lot. And they hug, they're known for hugging. They hug for reassurance and for safety, but they don't want to be hugged all the time. And they're playful and curious, but they can also be angry and they can be sad, So I thought when we came up with the panda, it needed to be us. It needed to be all of us mental health warriors and mental health advocates. And next to that, we gave him a little scar across the heart because panda has been, it's a true mental health warrior. It has been hurt, but not broken. We all have been hurt, and if we haven't, we will be hurt, but we will never be broken. And that's why it has this scar, and it lights up when it's angry, and it has a little star in its ear because to symbolize, the goals and the things that the panda can do and the user can do on their own. So, you have this toolbox, these stars that help you in the ear or outside to manage, daily life when it gets stressful, when anxiety hits, when panic hits, whatever. And so that's one thing. So the panda is new. People really love it. I have like a GIF out on Reddit that does belly breathing, where the belly kind of swells up. People love it.
Really?
Yeah, and because it makes you calm down immediately. It's rather than telling people now you need to breathe, you just look at it, and it does it in front of your eyes, and just looking at it makes you stop and calm down a little bit. So that's a panda. And then we introduce streaks because people, it's not like it's super easy to log your mood and do a few things, but to keep it up, you kind of need it. You need a reminder. You need a bit of gamification. So we have streaks, and you can have 7-day streaks, 14-day streaks, up to almost infinity. And it's like a game. So if you have, let's say, very small goals like drinking water, you can have that goal. You can 8 times a day. You can playfully check it off, get a reminder, check it off. And if you get to the 8 times, it becomes golden. Like you have your little badge there. And it's just very playful now. And the idea behind it is to really show people, look, you don't have to have large goals. You can have very small goals that you achieve, and you need reasons to tap yourself on the shoulder and say, well done. If that is brushing your teeth, fine, you deserve gold. If that is, climbing a high mountain, that's also fine. We're not comparing here.
Right.
Everyone is on their own journey and needs their own streak. So the whole streak experience, the goal experience is new, and it's a lot of fun. And then you can also prioritize and rearrange whatever goals you have. And we all know that checking off goals on a regular basis and checking logging your mood does make you feel better. We have signal, we have data that this is the case. So if we get people to just do little things, but continuously, they will see over time that their anxiety resides, that their mood gets more stable or improves. And so we want to make it really easy for people to have this goal experience and have many reasons to tap themselves on the shoulder. And then, you
Yes.
know, since we spoke, a few ugly things have happened, like, you know, Uvalde happened and shootings happened. And you feel so powerless in that moment.
Wow.
So
Can I ask really quickly, is Uvalde something that's felt around the world?
it is, but it's felt much more. It's felt in the U.S. So people
Right.
react to it. So we can measure anxiety, and people, especially in California, you could see a high spike of anxiety setting in again, especially among young people, because of school. So I translated the whole app to Spanish. You know, it took me a couple of nights, but it was the only thing that I felt I could do. You know, I can't be there. You know, you can't. It's such a tragedy, and it will
Right.
probably reoccur. But the worst for me really was that it hit, you know, the Latino community proportionally high. And, you know, these kids all had Latin Spanish names, and
Yeah.
it was really, really, really tragic, right? Really tragic. And, you know, I was taught to do something to, you know, get going. And so we translated it in Spanish. It's not perfect yet, of course, but it'll be perfect soon, so that people can use it, because the app is, as you know, it's completely free and it's anonymous.
Right.
And I think even if people speak English, but they feel like they want to, you know, voice record or video record their day, their thoughts in their mother tongue, they should be able to do so. Yeah. So that's what we did, and that's what's new. I think there's other things, the tiny little things. We did some videos, and we've got a new ambassador, a wonderful lady from California, 20 years old, who's into mental health and mindfulness and everything. So you'll see a lot coming your way now, and we're very happy to get going. There's much more downloads now. There's people writing to us, hey, thank you, you really saved me. My panic attack is much better now that I have EarKick, and, you know, I can sleep better due to the ambience mixer. And that just makes it so worth, you know, every time I post it in the general channel for the team to see, and to just know that even though people are anonymous, we can't reach out to them. We don't know who they are. But sometimes you hear from the other side of the world, you hear a voice going, thank you guys, you know, thank you for doing this. Please keep up the good work.
I had no idea. I had no idea that was even something available, right?
I didn't know that it existed. Some friend shared it with me, or, you know, I saw it in the app store, and oh, this is so cool. And, you know, I just wanted to tell you guys. So that's gold. You can't pay that experience, right?
Isn't that amazing?
Of knowing that you're helping people. Yeah.
I'll share little comments that we get, you know, with Jeffrey, and he'll be like, that's so amazing. And it isn't like the almost 2 million subscribers we care about, or the listens that we get. It's those comments that are like, do you really think that? Because now I can't stop thinking that.
Well, yeah. I mean, you know that people listen to what you're saying or doing when they quote you, and when they engage, rather than just giving you a thumbs up, right?
Right. I'm gonna say thank you for listening to Public Access America. Come back for our Thursday episode, because it's gonna be more of this, and we're gonna be talking about interesting stuff about mental health and well-being. So find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. For our disabled listeners, check out Victor Reader, Audible, or Amazon Music, as always. And check out our live streams on Sunday mornings. I wouldn't, but go ahead and do it. Sorry. Welcome back. I'm just saying Sunday morning isn't something that I would want to sit there and listen to Jason.
Come on.
But we have great conversation. So what I was thinking about today was this little thought experiment that I had, and it's me with a circle around me, and where I am is my center, and that circle is my mental health well-being. And Jeffrey used this word, scope creeping, and I can't get it out of my head. And now it's like this perspective that I use to look at everything. And our mental health is constantly being scope creeped on by everything around us. And like I said earlier in the last episode, it feels like that's supposed to be. that our stress is something we're supposed to deal with, and our mental well-being is secondary to that. And so I just wanted to find out if we had anything that, so the world is the world, but in our lives, I think we choose certain things that we don't
Yeah.
realize is scope creeping. And for me, food was one of those things that I was eating because it was supposed to be convenient and satisfying. And in the end, it was altering my mood. And once I got to a diversity of eating and less additives and preservatives, and I knew what was in my food and it was more of single ingredients, I noticed my mood changed. And when I looked up fructose malabsorption, a lot of the symptoms were mental, depression, lack of mood, just lack of energy. And then I wanted to let people know because that we covered that briefly on another show, and it's one of our most popular episodes now. It's in our top 5. And I think people are really interested about that, about food and how it can make us feel better. And we were just talking about that. And I think it's amazing. What I think we need to do is learn to protect our mental well-being. We can still help people while staying in our circle, but we can't just let everything into that circle all at once. We have to learn to pick and choose, and we need to value that circle as long as possible and as much as possible, because if we protect our mental well-being, we can then help others protect theirs. And like I said on Twitter, better people make a better world.
That is so true.
Okay, good. Usually I try and find a way to segue a question in there, but I don't really have one. It's just, I wish people would think about food in a better way. Jeffrey was talking about vegetarian tacos, and there's a whole world that wouldn't even try that because of the word in front of it. And I think that's so sad. I think Paul McCartney's daughter suggested like a vegan Monday, just to try it out, try other things out. I never would have tried Indian food if I hadn't just seen that the ingredients were what I was looking for. And so there he is. So for food to scope creep on our mental health, we need to realize that's something we should protect.
I would say you bring up that great point, and because I will be the first person to say I was guilty of that. Vegan or vegetarian, fuck that. I'm not trying that. But then of course, as you decide to be like, you know what, if I like it, I'm not going to ask what's in it or what's not in it. Like,
Right.
the only thing you should really care about what's in it is if it's something you're allergic to. Let's be real honest.
Right.
If it's like, hey, does this have shellfish in it? Yeah. Okay. Well, I can't have it. Or, I think dairy is the biggest one for me. And it's like, hey, if it's hard cheeses, I'm fine. But if there's like a lot of milk and, regular sour cream in it, I'm gonna have to pass on it because it's not gonna feel good.
But it has physical effects and mental effects,
Mhm.
right? Like the cheese not only weighs you down and makes you feel moody, depressed, and stressed and anxiety, but it also has the physical effects. And protecting your mental well-being means finding foods that won't cause stress like that if they don't have to, or at least allow yourself to pick and choose what you allow in.
Yeah, and the beauty is you do have the choice in many ways. Not complete. It's also a matter of finances, right? But we sometimes forget how many choices we have and how many
Right.
decisions we make, and how often it's just the most comfortable one, the next one, right? The one in that we give too much power to marketing. We give too much power to others, right? Where we should claim that and say, hey, this is my space. I'm going to decide what is good for my mood, and
Right.
good mood, good food, or good food, good mood. There is some truth to that. I just want to highlight that massive curiosity that is the antidote to all these problems of all these can't do, not good enough, all these negatives, right? You can
Right.
overcome a lot of that with massive curiosity. And then suddenly, hey, you will eat that taco, that vegetarian, or that
Right.
chickpea paste, whatever it is, not because you've switched religion, not because, somebody did something to you, just because
Right.
you're curious, like a child, right?
Right.
I mean, we get so much more richer in our lives if we allow for curiosity, and then we decide what is good for our mental well-being.
Right. I think the curious rarely care about being judged, right? They're just on a
Yeah.
mission for an answer. So,
Yeah. You're
yeah.
just you got this point, then you already see the next one you want to go to. It's a
Right.
massive journey, right?
Yeah.
And lose or missing out on that is so why? You needn't. You can have
Right.
such a great life. And also to that trying out, if you were to have allergies and stuff, even more, you should go out and track what you eat and track your mental health, use EarKick, and see whether
Right.
there is a correlation. If there is none, fine. But if there is one, you might have just found the key to a better life.
Right. I felt better on this day because I ate this. And when I ate this
Yeah.
over the 3 days, I didn't feel as, yeah. I ate salad for 8 months to get myself to a center, to have a
Mhm.
baseline of what my blood sugars and everything were. But in that, my roommate went from being like, salad, that's weird, to, hey, can I have some of that? To I just ate kale. And that's amazing that people will follow your journey with you. They'll pick and choose what they like. We all find these things, these commonalities, like, oh, you like everything I like, and then we slowly fall apart as we realize, well, I don't like banana, you like banana, I don't like peanut butter, ew, you like. But that's not what it's about, is it? It's about being
No, it's
together.
not. Yeah, and the thing is, food also gives you something to talk about. There's a good number of people who complain or say that their mental health suffers when they have to go to family gatherings, right? And then I ask them, yeah, what's so bad about that? It's like, it's
Yeah.
always the same. It's like just the years change, but it's the same sofa, it's the same table, it's the same dish. Just
Same
the
arguments, yeah.
grandparents, yeah, same arguments, same fight. You could just, watch the clock and it's going to erupt
Right.
at some point. And the food is the same because we've always done the same. And I think people who they're missing out on that opportunity to divert the topics and what everyone already has fixed opinions on. Let's say to something like food, new
Yep.
dish, new dessert, and then let's discuss it and have a discussion about that. I
Oh,
bet there
yeah.
is less struggle. I bet there is less tears. I bet.
I notice in all those family gatherings, they're only awkward until after you eat. And then suddenly kids are playing, you're sitting on the couch, your uncle's sitting next to you, and you really don't care what he's saying. It's people let loose after the food, but they're anxious before that. And it's your
Yeah.
family. It's your family.
Yeah.
Just do it. Or find people to make your family better. But yeah, diversify your foods. A lot of times though, when you're at the family gathering, you're like, oh, I'm looking forward to that pie. It's the only reason I'm here.
It is, but you can look, that's true, but you can bring presents. Like what I
Agreed.
like to do is I bring something from whatever country I'm coming from, a
Aw,
dessert, and then everyone is trying, and so you can have the traditional dish, but you bring something fresh or bring a friend. Just
right,
make sure that, like it's not like you have to go to that gathering and suffer through it. You can think of your own, like, what can you change? What can you
right,
contribute that's gonna maybe make your grumpy uncle smile? It's
right,
most probably not the discussion about whatever he's fanatic about, but
right.
maybe you can divert that attention towards something cool.
What did you get him to eat? I remember somebody put beef blood and rice in front of me, but wouldn't tell me what it was. The rest of the night, people loved me. That's all they talked about. Jason ate beef blood. Did you like it? Yeah, it was all right. Yeah. I love that. And then, so another thing that scope creeps on my mental well-being is tangential to allergies, and that's pain. I noticed
Mhm.
that pain terraforms the soul. It's something I've been saying for a long time. And so food and pain scope creeps. And so I think that's something important to recognize. And I think food helps with that. Exercise helps with that. But a lot of times we feel a lot like a poltergeist. Like pain is just something we have to deal with and we have to get through it. We shouldn't take care of our pain. We should take care of everybody else. And then when everything's done, then we'll go and take care of ourselves. But we never really get around to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pain is a fact, it's you can't discuss pain away. Some people try with watching something or listening to something, and that helps, but at some point really pain is pain. And I think you also need to validate that and say, hey, look, I'm in a lot of pain. It's a fact. This is what is happening. And now I have to brace myself to get through that hour or 2 hours, days, months. I bow before the people that have chronic pain and live with it and are still great people, good people. I bow.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't know what to do.
It is an invisible disability, isn't it? And I know Jeffrey's partner deals with that.
Oh yeah,
just on a daily basis. And I really admire them for being who they are through that. And their art must be a release for that.
Yeah, I've never actually asked that. I think that's a great question to ask. Hold on a second.
Debbie's
maybe we can learn something. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
You also do have people who have chronic pain use the app to listen to stuff. But it's, pain is pain. It's very, very right?
A lot of my pain was coming from my diet. And then I realized there's a way that you can mitigate the pain. It's always going to be there. But it doesn't have to be your master. Like, it doesn't have to control your hour by hour movements.
You're the boss.
Day. Right. I can take something for the pain and not lay in bed for 5 hours on a heating pad. I could eat right and not have to do either.
So what does Debbie say?
Answer is no. It hurts to make art.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Just the standing, right?
Mm-hmm. Standing, sitting, moving around. Yeah, it hurts to make art. Physically hurts to make art.
All right. And people are tracking pain on the EarKick app, you were saying?
They are tracking their symptoms, and what is the ones that struggle, for example, with a chronic pain that's not super hard, and choose to not take medication for that because it's tolerable. So what they do is they do breathing exercises because they help. We have a range of breathing exercises. They're short. You can make them slower and faster. You can have more repetitions. Okay. And by focusing on the breath and really, with or without music and sound, they can divert the attention from the pain to that. There is a few things you can do, but I think it depends on how intense your pain is and whether or not you choose to take a medication. Then they track the medication because you need to know.
That's smart.
Yeah, you need to know whether your medication is helping you at all and to what extent, and where, until you have calibrated it the right way, it's better to take notes. It's better to have kind of your stats and your data and your thoughts recorded on the app, and then you can go discuss with your doctor. So one user does that, it's like she will probably always have pain, but she's a fighter. She's a warrior. She's like, okay, I'm going to find the least medication I need to take for the goal, for the max effect. And I'm going to do whatever I can, like with other techniques. And I'm going to make sure I'm grateful for my life, even though it feels so unfair. But she's really strong. She's gotten there. And whenever she has a really dark day, she can always throw in more if she need to. Yeah, I admire people who can do that and who have found almost like the positive side of that. She says when there is no pain, that's life to her. Like when there is moments or hours where she's without pain, it has a lot to do with the weather, by the way, too. That's when she like ramps up and she does a lot of things and she knows this is so precious, it's going to be gone, you know, in whatever, an hour or so. And she really highlights those hours, and she's thankful for these hours, where people like, you know, maybe me and others go like, yeah, but I mean, isn't life painless? No, it's not. For a lot of people, it's not, right?
Nope, it is not. Like, I've got an old work injury, and for me, like, my shoulder has a permanent tear in it. It's all, you know, that's always going to be there. And that, you know, the weather affects it. You know, that was always the running joke when we were kids. Oh, you're so old that you can tell the weather's changing by the pain in your.
Oh man.
Yeah. No, seriously, when when there's a storm front moving in, those days hurt. They really, really hurt. So with the weather clearing up here, my shoulder actually doesn't hurt. It feels like when I say it doesn't hurt, I mean I can ignore it. It always hurts.
The funny thing about me is I will drill down on the pain. I will so hyper focus on it that it will be a pain, even if it isn't. Even if it was just a twinge, I will make that cancer. I will just think about it. Well, I'll think about it until it's so painful, and I don't know how to get past that. So I really like the EarKick app. I'm gonna have to go and find that function and use it, because the best way to mitigate pain is to get your mind off of it. Yeah.
Off of it and doing something, not just like passively watching something, do something with your body and feeling control, you know. And what you just said earlier about the weather. So you can the app correlates the weather, moon phases, your mood, and your anxieties and your symptoms. So if you think that the weather influences, let's say, a pain in your shoulder, then you can actually track it. You can see it because it tracks the weather, and you can take note of it. And so you stand a chance to prepare. You're not going to change the weather, but maybe at some point you move to another area where the weather is maybe less humid. I don't know. Right. At least you can make it as a sophisticated, well-informed decision rather than being, you know, like the victim of circumstances. And I like that. The moon phase, I can't tell you whether it's pain related, but some of our users, you know, they're completely convinced that the moon phases and their mood and anxiety cycles coincide.
Of course. When Mars is in retrograde, people are freaking out for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah, for about 3 months in November, I had about 5 friends that were just beside themselves with Mars being in retrograde. Just everything that was happening was because of that.
Jeffrey, I got a new topic for your next thesis.
I want to see Jeffrey study astrology.
Moon phases and mental health, and moon phases and pain. That would be one.
But that's what I'm saying. You can convince yourself that anything is causing the pain. I think it's good to be curious and reach out and find these other factors like weather and mood phases, if you think so, or food, or other people, or ways you sit, or things you do. You know, like, always be curious about what's causing the pain. Don't assume that it's yours.
So I wonder, Karin, maybe in this case, because, you know, data analyst brain kicking in here.
Well, I love this part.
Because I'm all about objectivity, of course, being a scientist. And so for me, you know, I need to know that what's happening is objective to what's being recorded. Does the app have a way of actually recording, you know, say day's temperature or something? Or in this case, you know, my theory is like when the weather is starting to affect my shoulder, air pressure changes, for example. Because I don't believe that it's the sun or the rain that actually affects it. I believe that it's, you know, the air pressure that's changing, that's putting pressure on my body.
Right.
And so that's the question is would the app be able to automatically potentially record that based on location settings?
Yes, it does.
Okay, yeah, because then you would be able to correlate, like, you know, if your pain is starting to spike, you would be able to correlate that with, you know, pressure increasing or pressure decreasing. Or
yes, that's the good thing. You know, like, if people allow for location, tracking the location, we can do that. And then, you have the whole range of health data that is on your phone, right? That is sitting there and passively being collected anyway. And you can put it to work by correlating it with the location, the weather, and much more. And what it does, it gives you a much more granular understanding of your own situation. And that's what matters, your own situation. And it's only known to you. Like, again, anonymous, right? And the thing is that knowledge and clarity are power. And I wish more people realize that they have a lot of power at their fingertips. They don't have to do the math, data scientists, right, by themselves. We do it for them. But, it gives you so much more to choose from. When you're in pain, when anxiety hits, when, I know for a fact that my mood is really bad when there is too many rainy days in a row. I know that for a fact. I can see it. The visualization is not how I feel. It's what it says, right? And what we do is you have the subjective feeling where you say, I feel like this. You have an emoji that you select, but that you also have the voice biomarker that you can't fake. So we have a technology that's automatic, that will catch your mood as it is from your voice. And there might be a difference between what you feel or you think your mood is and what your data says your mood is. And you correlate that with everything else, and that becomes very interesting.
So the words "I'm fine," "it's okay" are irrelevant.
Well, this is where so for me, this is where it gets interesting, because one of the things that we always have to take into account is what most of us call the placebo effect. It's, if you think you're being harmed or if you think you're being helped, it has an actual effect on your health outcome. It's a really weird thing. And so for people who, like you were saying, with Mercury being in retrograde, you can, the data might line up with their mood going down because Mercury is quote unquote in retrograde. But then the real question is it actually Mercury in retrograde that is causing that issue? Or is it because you believe and you're letting it affect you, and you are letting it affect you because Mercury is in retrograde, and that is actually having an effect?
Correct.
It's the whole correlation does not equal causation.
Right.
That's true. Correlation is not causation. But the good thing is that if you look at biofeedback, that's your body's language, right? And that's less influenced by or biased by something you believe. The placebo effect does have, can be very strong. But the more you listen to what your body's language is saying, your biofeedback, all of that, it's like drawing a picture of what's going on physically and mentally. And it's not just a stick figure drawing. It has colors, it has perspective, shade, etc. And that's what, correlating different data sources, hopefully a few objective ones, does. You can still have your own subjective feeling. It's absolutely valuable because that's what you feel.
Right.
But you'll be a bit less, let's say, you won't work with heuristics as much. And you might get the curiosity to dig a bit deeper and say, okay, it's maybe not just the moon and blame it on the moon being wrong and you having a bad mood, but, being interested in what your body language is and what your biofeedback says, what everything else says. And there we're again in the curiosity, the massive curiosity that can bridge even, difficult and hard times that you're given in your life. So yeah, I'm with you. It doesn't, causality is not the same as correlation, but correlation can teach you a lot.
Right. It's true. And then that's the other thing that you have is that you also have this, quote unquote confirmation bias. Well, these bad things are happening because, and that's where it's, objectively speaking, it's like, one of my favorite examples is that, the number of murders that happen in Chicago spike when the temperatures are at their lowest. So, therefore cold weather causes murder. Now that's, you can correlate the two, but that doesn't mean that they're and you know, if you're like, yeah, you know, it just feels like every time winter rolls around, you just end up with more murder. And it's like, well, you can confirm that all you want, but then you have to look at the, you know, it does that actually, is there actually you know, a real a real causation there? And it turns out,
Right.
no, there's really not.
No,
I
there is not.
I relate it to looking at ingredients in food. Like I had 10 foods and I looked for the common ingredient to decide what was causing my pain, causing my situation. And that's how I came to fructose is because it was in all of the foods that hurt, but none of the foods that didn't. And so the EarKick app is giving you 50 different things and you can see the commonality in
Yeah.
that after 30, 60, 90 days, after a year. You can start to see that maybe it's Mars, actually. You don't know unless you start, right?
Yeah, and I think it's just a good tool to also care, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, yeah, I have to live with this now forever. No, it's like, hey,
Right,
look, you have a sandbox to play in. It might not be the most luxurious one, and maybe it's a bit unfair the way the sandbox is structured, but it's
right.
a sandbox. You don't have to sit and wait until, bad things happen. And to the fructose part, yeah, this is a huge topic. Sugar, fructose, all that is a huge topic. Really, you guys have to do a show on that, because there's so much to talk about this, and I'd be
Cool.
happy to be part of that too. Because
Yay, next
Well,
month.
man,
especially too, because, you know, the European Union has much different, you know, food standards than the United States does.
Yeah.
And so you end up with that grand question, you know, this is the whole, you know, is our food really affecting us, or, you know, is it actually something greater that's going on? You know, I've
Yeah.
had my own theories about it, just
I don't.
because, you know, just because that's what I do is I look at, you know, I look at numbers and I go, I don't know that this is actually the issue, but I do think that there are greater issues that maybe we're not looking at.
Right.
yeah,
I like tweeting, like I tweeted to Arby's and I told them, I think you're the closest chance for fast food to go clean in this new wave. Like you have the meat, you just need to change your sauces and your bread. So I try and reach out positively to places because I think clean. I did it to General Mills. I was like, "Hey, I love your cinnamon toast crunch. Could you get rid of the fructose?" And like 3 days later, they were like, "We're on it." And I was like, "Wow, did I just change something?"
yeah, but the thing is that fructose or whatever sugar comes
Hmm.
with so many creative names.
Right.
Mm.
By the time you know that fructose is causing you pain, it's got another name and is still in your food. So yeah,
Right.
but
I
let's
corn,
discuss that another time.
corn syrup is a big thing for me.
Yeah, corn
Yeah.
syrup, lots
And
of other names that you can call it just to have it in it, because
hmm.
people are used to eating sweet. And how are you going to make something sweet if you don't do it with something?
Right.
Yeah, a lot of people in Europe, at least, you use dates. So like highly concentrated dates to sweeten
Mm,
food or snacks, and then
right.
it'll say zero added sugar. And people go, "Oh, this must be so
Good.
healthy,"
Yeah.
and then eat it, and to the liver, it's the same. It doesn't make a difference.
Still sugar.
It's still sugar. That's
It's
what
still
fruit
sugar.
is.
Yes, it's still
Hmm.
sugar.
Yeah.
And if you ate all those dates, you'd be exploding, right? I mean,
Right.
to get the sweetness that you need for a snack, you'd have to have like half a tree of dates, and nobody eats that. So what you
Woo.
need is the fiber. It's not the freaking
Right. Chickpeas. Go with the chickpea. I
chickpeas
saw
is good. Yeah.
there's a commercial for Dunkin Donuts, and they were like, "Hey, come in for our birthday cake frappe." I was like, "Can we just stop trying to shove sugar into other sugars here, America?" Like it's a treat. It's not a lifestyle. It to me, sugar's like a lot like cocaine, in where it has an adverse effect over you over a long period of time, and you just become normalized
Addicted.
to it. But if once you're off of sugar or off of fast food for a month or two, and then you go back, you're like, oh, what is this? You know?
Yeah, it's just very, very addictive.
Yeah.
Same as other things. What you said before was about, like food playing such a huge role. I think it's not just food. It's, it's food, it's sleep. Sleep is probably one of the biggest causes of mental imbalance.
Right. It scope creeps on our mental wellness for sure.
Exercise, a lot of it is exercise or being out in nature, having all these opportunities. And then of course, other factors. And of course, if the stocks are crashing and you're scared about, where your next paycheck is going to come from, that's going to heavily influence your mental health. There's no question. What we need to learn, though, is to make sure that not all of those pillars, are shaking or gone. So if we can influence food and sleep, we're going to be better off when inflation hits hard, right?
Right. There's ways to protect your sleep. I don't keep my devices in my bedroom because I want that time, and I protect my resting time. And when I tell my roommate, when you see me, I'm okay to do whatever you need done. But if you don't see me, don't ask. If I'm not responding, it's because I'm valuing my rest. And I don't do that. What I do is I say, oh, I should take a nap, but I'm not going to. I'm going to do this first, and then this next, and then this next. And then it's 1:30 in the morning, and I'm saying I should have taken care of myself more,
Last night for me was a great example. I am constantly on my device. Like, it's just between work and my social life, I'm constantly on it. But last night I ended up going over to a couple friends' houses and we played tabletop games. And so the last time I remember looking at my phone was at like 10:30, and then when I finally called it, and when we finally finished the game and called it a night, it was 2 o'clock in the morning. And there I was interfacing with people and not, looking at a screen for hours on end.
Right.
And so it's one of the things that, I know is next on my priority list, which is putting the device down and interfacing with people for a change. Something nature. I used to do a lot. In fact, I would say that was probably one of the glorious things about having a cell phone back in the old T9 word days, was that the only thing that you were looking at your phone for was text messages, and nobody was really texting because there was a high cost to texting.
Right.
So, like my phone literally was just there, but nothing ever happened with it.
Yeah.
And now it's like you're constantly on it. It's like there's plenty of upsides. Like, I love the fact that if I need to learn something, I can, I've got a device that has the access to anything and everything I could ever want to know. Right. On the downside, I'm constantly on the fucking thing, and I don't like that. and it's you get just finding out how to break the habit. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, I've also got to figure out what I enjoy doing, what keeps me away from it. And I always loved tabletop games. Like, they're fun.
Yeah, there's lots of things you can do without the screen. We have started, my partner and I have started to do math. Like,
really?
With books. Yeah.
I love that.
So we have like these, we sleep outside in nature. So we have these lamps, and then you have the book. And I need to write it down. I can't do it all in my head. And then, so you're reading this book in the dark and trying to do basic algebra and basic, mathematics. And it really takes your attention, and you're in there. You're trying to solve a problem. Yeah. And after that, you can really sleep well. But it's important to do it kind of like pen and paper. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was what games is great. Games is great. And now that the weather is good, you can go outside and swim actually here. But what I find, and I appreciate you saying that, Jeffrey, is so hard to break a habit. There is thousands of people working on making messengers and you know, all the TikToks of this world, very addictive, and to
Mhm.
keep you in there forever. And we're not superhumans. It's just too powerful. So for us
Right.
to break it is difficult, but we have, you know, we've lived a life. But for whom it's really difficult is for the children and teens. We're raising the most sleep deprived, sleepless generation that this earth has seen.
Yeah.
And this bugs me. This troubles me, because that's not going to end well. And I'm a very positive person, very optimistic person. But we're raising a sleepless generation.
All
and
right.
it's due to that.
Oh, you know, this is where things get really interesting, because we actually just had this conversation in the house a few weeks ago.
Mhm.
And it led me to ask a bunch of people around what's changed. Because, I mean, obviously technology has changed. There's no question about that. But
Mhm.
the thing is that, you know, my brain goes to, is the technology the problem, or is the technology a symptom of the problem? And so for me, it's one of those things where it's like, sometimes I feel like we get a little too simplistic. Like, we go, what was the big change that has happened from my generation to my kids' generation? Oh yeah, these little son of a bitches. But realistically, what has changed from my generation to my kids' generation, or what has changed from my parents' generation to my kids' generation?
Mhm.
So anecdotally, I asked my mom, what did school life look like for you as a kid? You know, the question that I had, you know, because this is something that I also saw, was, how much homework do you have? Like, how much homework do you have to do? Did you have to do when you were a kid? I was like, oh, 30 minutes at most. I'm like, per subject? And my mom was like, no, total. That's all we had.
Mhm.
For me, I had usually about an hour to 2 hours worth of homework to do a night. My kids can have, you know, depending on the track, they can have upwards of
3, 4.
3, 4, 5 hours.
Yeah.
So imagine, if you will, you know, think of school like a job, like any other job. You go to school for, you know, 6, 7, 8 hours a day, depending on how your schedule runs. And then you got to come home and do 3, 4, 5 hours worth of homework a night. So
Right.
you've now taken, you know, what we would have considered a normal work day at 8 hours and turned it into a 12-hour shift.
Mhm.
And like any other
Baseline.
person, you know, we have to have that come down time in
Right.
order to, you know, get ourselves out of these habits, out of the space that we're in. And so if your social life is supposed to take place, you know, my social life took place after school, you know, either through
Mhm.
extracurricular activities, or
Mm-hmm.
you know, my generation had, you know, the first, you know, messenger boards on the internet. So we would message, you know, we'd message our friends, and, you know, there really wasn't a whole lot you could do. So with that, you know, the question became, are we giving our kids too much to do, so that when they finally, you know, at the end of their 12-hour shift, they're literally trying to do whatever they can to bring, you know, to, you know, entertain themselves, be social with their friends,
Right.
and, you know, do the things that we, you know, that, you know, Jason, as a kid, when you were playing with your friends, when were you supposed to come home?
When the lights came on, the street lights came on.
And what time did you start playing with your friends?
Oh, I don't know, 4 o'clock after I did my homework. You know, like
So
it was an hour of homework.
you had, you know, from, you know, arguably 4 o'clock until, you know,
9.
9 o'clock, that you were out doing stuff with your friends. You were
Yeah.
out being active. You're
Mm-hmm.
out doing things. But now you've got kids that are coming home from school at 4. They're doing 4 hours worth of homework, and then
Right.
we're telling them, hey, go be social.
Yeah.
That
So
12
agree
hours
with
is
you.
the 12 hours is suddenly a baseline though. We're not
Yeah.
saying, "Hey kids, you're super stressed because you do 12 hours worth of work." We're saying that 12 hours worth of work is a baseline that you're building on. Now go get a job and eat dinner and shower and
Like,
find friends and be a mature
Yeah.
human being,
Yeah.
you know?
It's definitely that, and we all know, and science shows more hours do not yield better results. More hours and more homework do not. You have so much capacity to learn something new, and it just becomes futile after a few hours. We know from focused work that 4 hours of focused work is max you can do per day. Really deep work, right? And everything else is kind of gonna have to be shallow. It's gonna be have to be something else, or recreation. So the 12-hour shift makes zero sense for nobody. It doesn't work.
So for me, the way that anecdotally, the way that I've looked at it is, my hypothesis has been that the technology isn't a problem. It's the symptom of the fact that these kids don't have a social life. So they're living vicariously through TikTok, through Instagram, through Facebook, trying to connect with their friends there, because the lights have already come on. It's, they're done for the day and they have to be inside.
Right.
So that's like, for me, I didn't have that issue really, because I didn't have as much homework, or later on, I just didn't do it.
Right.
Or I would do it as fast as I could. And, it was what it was. I just wasn't going to deal with it. And that understanding of how that has changed is just absolutely wild to me, because I can't fathom going from my mom doing maybe 30 minutes of homework a night, maybe that was the max, to, there have been times that my kids have started on homework at 4 o'clock and I'm helping them clear until 11. That's really that's messed up. And then you're telling them to go straight to bed after that. They've had no chance to decompress whatsoever.
Or learn, or put that learning into action. We learn and then we live so that we can put what we learned to use. And if you never live, you never put that learning to use. And what Karin was saying, so if 4 hours is the normal human baseline, everything after that is kind of life scope creeping in on your mental wellness. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, deep work. Deep work means really focused work. And we know from homeschooled kids that they get everything done in those 4 hours if they're really focused. But what schools are doing, and that's not just in the US, by the way, is just piling things. It's just like a task list, and how much of that is going to be retained? Two factors to learn well is you have to use as much of your experience and your senses to do it, and you need good sleep, because we learn during sleep. We don't learn when we learn when we repeat, right? And so from two sides, and technology, I see technology as an enabler of good and bad. So maybe it's a symptom. I don't have enough evidence for that, or I haven't looked at it deeply enough. But what I see is it's eating up from two ways, right? So the sleep part and the part of being overwhelmed by the book. And that's just not gonna work out. We see a lot of kids who are not, my partner's kids were homeschooled and they excelled. And as far as I know, they spent most of their lives on the boat, swimming, fishing, and having a great fun, touring the world on a boat. And school time was very condensed, but it was enough. It's not the masses; is whether you can connect the new things to the old things. And I doubt you can do that for 12 hours straight.
And that's the other thing too, is that anecdotally speaking, what I have watched in the days, from the pandemic to now, where we're at, where, kids are back in school, like my kids would get all their stuff done, but then, they would have, homework to do, but they were able to focus and get that stuff done because their class time was limited from 10 to 2.
Right.
And then they would have, they would get some stuff done afterwards. They wouldn't have a whole lot of time. So then, it would take up some of their electronic time, but overwhelmingly they were craving interaction. Now, that they're going to school a whole bunch and they have a bunch of homework, when the days that they don't have homework, they're desperate to have a friend over. And so they're sitting here watching movies or watching TV shows, but they're interacting with each other. The TV seems to be more like white noise most of the time.
Right.
And even still, at some point, they all will their friend and our youngest ended up getting up and they're like, let's go pick mushrooms. And they left to go pick mushrooms. It was I was like, wait, who the hell does that? And then it was like, you know what? Go do it. Go be outside. Go do the
Yeah.
thing. And they brought back like freaking 5 pounds worth of, oyster mushrooms. It was really
Right.
cool. But that has not been something that they had been able to do.
More importantly, they're learning who they are.
But even crazier is that there's the kids themselves, without any discussion on this with them, what they have also come to figure out on their own is that their teachers are complaining about how much work they have to do after school, because they're like, oh, well, I have to teach all these classes all day long, and then I have to grade all these papers. But then the teachers themselves have these expectations that they do all of this homework later. And it's like, y'all are just, you just are hurting yourself in this one, because it's like, as educators, you have to understand this concept of, there is a point of too much, but also too, now you're doing it to yourself. So then the question becomes, what does quality of education look like when you have your educators being just as sleep deprived as the kids?
Yeah, and it's mainly the standardized school plans and everything, because it's now got to be the same everywhere. So you're basically, trying to hit those milestones and those KPIs, where before it was, in my childhood, it was possible for a teacher to convey a certain topic the way they wanted, what the results needed to be in. But if they went out to the forest to explain plants, they could do that. They didn't have to do lesson 1, 2, 3 and then take exactly the same test that is rated at the same exact way. I like standardization because that helps us compare. But in some ways, it can also be hurtful, because then you become the slave of whatever the system wants you to do.
Agreed.
And maybe there's better ways to teach math. Maybe there is a better way to teach a certain topic.
For somebody, for the individual, we learn things differently, right?
Yes,
right.
Definitely.
Definitely. Well, I don't learn math the way Jeffrey or you learn math. God, no.
Right.
I bet.
Well, even like my kids have come to that whole conclusion of, they're like, how often do you have to take tests? And I said, only when I'm trying to get a certification. And they're like, well, how often do you get certifications? I'm like, maybe once a year I do some certification or recertification. And they're like, well, how do you prepare for that? I'm like, some of it's open book. Some of it's just, I've worked with this stuff for so long that I know it.
Right.
I've always subscribed to the Einstein methodology. Don't memorize what you can easily look up. The reason why is that if you use it enough, you will memorize it, because you will be working with it constantly. And there's no sense in punishing people for having and using the knowledge that is at their fingertips. I mean, one of the things that I always said about my master's degree, that we all said about our master's degree when I was in school, is that it's not that we knew everything. We just knew how to use Google better than most people did. And we knew how to take what somebody else had done and then manipulate it to meet our own needs.
But then ask your own questions in a more advanced way.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's literally it. So then my kids are like, well, then why do we have to do that? I just went, that's a great question. Why do you have to do that? Like, because, real life is that most of our work is project based. It's like, nobody shows up and is like, all right, I need you to complete this test and let's see how you do.
Right.
It's hey, I need you to build this thing. I need you to draw this thing. I need you to complete this set of tasks.
It's hitting the fan and we need it solved now.
Oh, and nobody goes, oh, and by the way, you can't ask for help, or you can't use a book.
Right.
Or you can't look something up. Nobody does that. Why? Because we're expected to have all of this knowledge at our fingertips and actually use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And be actual, actually assess and actually learn and actually perform.
Right.
Yeah, but to the use of that technology that is so helpful, I find it difficult to expect young people, children, teens to handle a supercomputer in their pocket that's actually not built for kids. It's built for grown-ups, and we grown-ups have our problems with it, and
Yeah.
not overusing and not becoming completely addicts to social media, etc. So it's to me it's really difficult, and the only way to really help the kids is to put very clear rules in place and to help them stick to those routines without labeling certain behaviors.
Give
right?
them other options than the phone.
Yeah.
What I see it as is that circle with me in the center actually bringing all of that stress directly into my mental well-being via the phone. Like, do I have work? Yes. And now it's right here. Always right here. There's always an email. There's always a
There's
message. There's
always
always a
something to do.
notification. But if I put that away, 12 hours later, yeah, there's still going to be an email, but I protected my mental well health. I think
Yeah.
kids are going to start using technology in a radically different way that doesn't scope creep, you know? I think
Hopefully.
they're going to have enough of this, you know? They're going to get through school, they're going to change things when they grow up, and there's going to be a shift because that's the way the world works. We see the food table one way and then we turn it upside down and say, "Oh, that's how it should look now." And we constantly go back and forth, and kids are going to change the world. I loved having Jay on the show for that reason, because when I brought up school shootings, Jay was like, "What?" Like, I think we did a drill last year. It's not an issue for them, but inclusivity and non-binary options in school are what matter to Jay. And we're sitting here at a national level in the cloud saying this is what matters to kids, and kids are like, well, no. And if you're not going to listen to us, we're just going to do our own thing in our own way, and you'll never know how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's gonna be change. We just don't know what.
Yeah.
And we really need to support our future, our young people in any way we can, right? Without patronizing, but also helping them set boundaries and keep routines and rituals going. I think they can't be expected to do it all on their own, but they should absolutely co-coach, choose, and co-work with us to put a framework in place that works for them. Yeah. So, it's not just simply saying, "Oh, this is bad for you." We need to make sure that they have a way to break the addiction or break the cycle of whatever it is. Right.
Yeah. That's one thing that I've always talked about with them is managing expectations. Yeah. Because reality and your expectations are never the same. So for example, like here, where we're looking at, a potential national repeal of Roe versus Wade, we had, which is, the protection of abortion rights in the US. We had a bunch of kids walk out, and of course, my kids decided they wanted to be a part of that. And personally, to me, I'm the kind of person that says, hey, if this is important enough to you that you're willing to walk out of class and march to the Capitol, hey, go be heard. Now let me tell you what some expectations are that you need to manage. Because you're going to learn this. It would be more helpful if I could help temper some of that and let you know that, hey, there's a good chance that you're going to run into people who are going to be counter protesting. There's a good chance that they're going to try and bait you into a fight. There's a good chance that they want someone to be violent with them so they can be violent back, or just be violent, period. And there's a good chance that you're going to hear some really terrible stuff. There's a good chance that you're going to hear some really empowering stuff. But that in the end, you need to understand that you're going to encounter a whole realm of experiences, and you may not know what to do with that. So here's my advice. Now go forth and you have at least a standard set of expectations that you can now go out and go, okay, this isn't quite what he was saying, but I understand where that was coming from. Or, oh, hey, this is really scary. Did I come up with a plan to get out of this scenario? Oh, yes, I did. We talked about this.
Mhm.
And I said, you can take these lessons and you can apply it to any time that you decide to, march on the Capitol, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Or if there's another protest you want to do, or just even in your general life, if you're out somewhere and you feel like you're not safe, what is your plan of escape, for example?
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
things you have to think about
Yeah.
by helping them manage those expectations without the idea of micromanaging their existence. You
Mhm.
now have a set of kids who may not have all of the relevant experiences, but they have at least some greater knowledge on what to expect. And they
Heck
can
yeah.
make their own decisions and learn from there. Because that's
Yeah.
how we all did it.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
a boundary to a child is a prison, but a boundary to an adult is a freedom.
Yeah, I mean, again, those are such great opportunities, invitations to work something out with your child,
Yeah.
and grow together and get to know each other better through that, so that we can be thankful for all these discussions we need to have
Mhm.
Yeah.
around technology, around phones, around politics. There is Kids are never too young for politics or for political discussions. Never.
Right.
There is
No.
never a topic that you can't explain in a childlike way to them,
Yeah.
so that they can be part of this. And I live in a direct democracy, and I think we can't start early enough to involve them in
Mhm.
discussions like that, and we have
Right.
a duty to do so.
That
Yeah.
that the idea is choices and freedoms. Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
also too, like we've talked about it on here before, is that if you ignore what the children are thinking and feeling and not engaging with them and not
Yeah.
incorporating their thoughts, they become voters who go, you wouldn't listen to me. I'm going to do my own thing now. And whatever you get is what you get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or a
Emotional voting.
Yeah.
or a gunman that didn't tell you what he was gonna do and takes out 19 kids.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
we got to pay more attention, and I think in all of this, a living wage changes everything. That's my final statement. Like, I don't know how a parent with three jobs is going to help raise a child in the way that we hope that they are raised.
Yeah, I don't think that is possible, to be
Yeah.
honest.
It's
Yeah.
all those
Mhm.
pressures. It's all those scope creeping life pressures that we're told we should just deal with. Your kids should just deal with them. Put your kid on your put your kid in front of the TV, get back to work because we need this done. And it
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
affects everybody.
Mhm.
Everybody suffers because life scope creeps because we don't protect our own well-being, in essence protecting others that we care about.
Yeah, that's true. Let's change it. I don't
Well,
know
let's
how
let's
exactly,
change
but
it.
I'm not going to give up.
Well, I think the idea is to use the EarKick app and create the best person you can be. Like
Yeah.
try it for a year, and then at the end of the year, see if you've improved. A life is nothing but a journey of trying things and being curious. If you're just going to sit on a couch and assume you know everything from age 12 to age 80, you're no human. Like somebody that does nothing is a nobody, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the magic is do it in small steps, like it
Right.
takes 1 minute at most per
Yeah.
day. And if you really do it for a year, I think the title will be, I think you start with a noob and then you become like the ultra Uberman, mensch, or, king Maxima, whatever. I don't know the
Yeah.
title that the level is, but you'll be in a league. And I want to meet you if you do that for a year.
I love that. I love that. Thank you all for being here. Did you have anything to wrap up on? Anybody?
I think for me, the biggest wrap is going to be that all the topics that we talked about today, I really hope that, this generation worth of scientists takes, what we've talked about, take the data that they can get that's going to be available to them. And we start to actually fix some of these
Yeah.
problems that we've seen, that we've come up with. Because if we don't make the changes now using informed decision making through good data, we're going to get changes that really suck, and we're going to end up in a worse place than we are now.
Yeah.
Agree. Let's do more rational and data-based, data-driven decisions and less emotional ones. Yeah.
But also too, let's take those emotional pieces, but then, use the data to say, hey, look, it's not that, either you're right or it's not that you're wrong, but because that's what science does.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're not right, but we found something.
I love it. Thank you for the baby formula, by the way, Zurich. And we're going to have Dan on next month, by the way, for Everybody Talking Science. He's been honeymooning for the last month, and he emailed me to told me that, and I told him, I'm kind of angry at you for emailing me about that. So he hasn't emailed me back. Thank you for being here, Karin. You're the most amazing person. I told my friend Kai, I said, you have to listen to her episode. She sounds like a smile. And Kai was like, I love the way you describe people. And you do.
You make my day. I sound like
a giant smile.
That's great. My gosh. Thank you so much. You guys are too to me.
Yay.
Thank you so much.
And we'll talk to you next month.
Yes, absolutely. Yay. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yay.
Fantastic.
I always wondered, like, I had no idea up until 20 minutes before we hit record what I wanted to talk about. But that scope creeping shit, it's everywhere, Jeffrey. I see it everywhere. My friend is like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, stop scope creeping. I'm minding my business here.
Scope creep is one of those things, like, it's such a fantastic word until you start to realize